Ready to go? Welcome everybody to a design review board meeting for December. Our first meeting in which we have two new staff members present, and for which we're very grateful, and hope that you can come up to speed very rapidly as you assess what's going on in town and what needs to be going on in town. And we have a few items on our agenda, I see, mostly to do with the library. Paul Butler had an item also. I think for the sake, because we do have the architects here from the library, we should proceed with them first. So Justin, you want to call whatever the item and number is and get started.
Sure. So it's item number 5 in old business. It's for a pending application for a new library and related site work at 1 Tunxus Avenue.
Okay, I see Richard's here. You're going to be speaking off the library. I see Michael Sigan's here also.
Yes.
You want to start? I did get a chance. I hope some of the other members had a chance to view the library board building committee's meeting last night. And I'm glad to see that there are a number of changes that Richard's about to talk about or suggested changes, many of which came from this body. So Richard, go ahead, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Richard Sipek. I'm an architect with TSKP Studio, the firm in Hartford that was retained by the town to help with the planning and design of the library project. With me is Deanna Lancer. Deanna, if you could wave your hand.
Hello, everybody.
Deanna is also an architect. She's been working together with me and other members of our staff. We have a number of consultants, one of whom is present. Actually, 2 people are present from our landscape consultants, Richter and Segan. Michael Segan is here and Jeffrey Paracchio is also here. I don't see anybody else from our consulting team. Okay, so what I'm going to do is ask Mike Segan to start the presentation. He'll talk about the site, and then when he's finished, I'll talk about the building.
Great, thanks, Richard. Mike Segan with Richter and Segan. We're the landscape architects on the team. I don't know if you can zero in a little bit closer, Richard.
Deanna is handling this PowerPoint show. Deanna, if you could go to slide version, that would be a good place to start. And then you can zoom in on the individual slides if you can do that.
Great, fantastic. As the chairman had mentioned, the site plan has been, I think, significantly revised and modified and I think improved since the last time we were in before the board. It may not look like that, from 30,000 feet at first glance, but on closer examination, I'll walk you through so that there are a number of changes and improvements to the plan. And these are all based on comments and responding to comments from this board, as well as staff, the building committee, and others as we've moved along through the process. Starting on the east side of the brook where the library is proposed, a new building. I don't know if you can zero in on that, Deanna, on that right side.
On the right side, yep.
Yeah. The first, I think, significant improvement is the entry plaza design at the library's main entrance. The entry has been modified from that original concept you had seen. It's both enlarged and with the paving pattern enhanced. Benches and bike racks have been added as furniture on the plaza. Plantings have been added along the ramp access on the north side of the plaza, as well as on the south side, both to soften that hardscape and provide some separation from Mountain Avenue, which is a fairly busy road. The architects will follow and talk in a little more detail. They have an enlargement of the plaza area as well, so I won't get into that in any more detail. Another big change on that side of the brook is the relocation of the dumpster. And facilities, the library facilities has agreed to locate the dumpster on the Riley site, on really away from that previously undesirable location, which was about the only spot left that we had gotten agreement on in the northeast corner of the Proser Libraries, the Prosser site itself along Tunxus Avenue, if you remember where it was located previously. The real benefit to moving it over on the Riley site, in addition to the aesthetic part, is that we were able to remove the service drive behind the library that was paralleling the brook. The main purpose for that drive was to actually access the dumpsters from the back side. So with the service drive eliminated, this has reduced grading and pavement and floodway and the flood hazard itself, and provided for more green space between the library and the brook. In its place, you'll see, I don't know, if I guess you can't zero in Dion at all on that area, but in its place, we're showing a future trail connection that
Yes.
extends
It's
along,
right here, right?
yes, along the back side of the brook. It really starts down on Mountain Avenue, comes along the entire back side, and connects up along the brook to Philly Park. So that's a significant, I think, amenity that's been added to the plan. Moving over to the west side of the parking lot, or the parking lot side of the brook, we've also made some significant changes. These are also a result of input from staff and others. First, we have dropped the elevation of the parking lot. This has significantly reduced the fill and grading in the flood zone. It has also has a whole bunch of other benefits. It allowed us to greatly reduce the grading for the basin to the north of the parking lot, and also eliminated the removal of quite a bit of woods in that northern area as well. In addition, it's allowed us to redistribute parking from the west side of the lot to the east side. This in turn has allowed us to save 2 large oak trees along the west property line, which are a really nice specimen, and also locate the potential pedestrian connection to the commercial facility to the west that has come up a number of times here. We showed it as just a conceptual connection. We now have worked it into the design. It directly aligns with the little plaza where the bridge entry is, heading back towards the library, and also to the walk that would head directly south to Mountain Avenue, which provides us 2 means of access back to the library, but also to the continuing east towards the town center area as well. Regarding the planting design, as we mentioned in our last meeting, we changed that multi-stem tree that's repeated in the grove along the south porch and the bridge to a Stewardia. The Stewardia is a great flowering tree. I use it often. Will provide 4 seasons of interest, and I think be a more appropriate scale along the face of the library in that elevation as it matures over time. That concludes a really quick overview of what we think are some significant changes and hopefully improvements to the overall plan. And be happy to answer any questions, or you might find, I'm going to turn over to Richard, that he may answer some of those questions, because he will talk about some site elements as well. Richard?
Yes, thanks very much, Mike. So I would like to continue with the several slides to try to answer some of the questions that were raised at the last meeting we had with the board. One of which is, what does this pedestrian bridge look like? Can you go back to the previous slide? And yes, so the pedestrian bridge is located here. It crosses over Washbrook next to the porch that will be built along the library on the southern side. And then at the bottom of that pedestrian bridge are steps. You can come down the steps, or you can continue down a handicapped accessible ramp, an access ramp, to bring you down to that level. I want to emphasize what Mike just said about the reduction in fill on the Riley side. This was something that we discussed with engineering, and we were able to achieve it. It doesn't really change the appearance of the bridge, but we have developed some additional drawings to explain how it's built. Next slide. So on the right side of the bridge, at its uppermost slope, is where the bridge is connected to the building and to the porch. And then there's a slope down to the Riley lumber parcel on the left. I keep calling it the Riley lumber. Everybody's referring to it that way, but the intention is to actually combine the parcels into one lot so that we satisfy planning and zoning requirements. A new element in this bridge design is a concrete bridge abutment, which is placed on the western bank of Wash Brook, right there. Having a support in that location significantly reduces the structural requirements of the bridge. That abutment is placed out of the floodway, so it doesn't hinder potential floodwaters, which is something that engineering department required. But it does improve or makes the much more efficient bridge in terms of structural requirement and consequently less cost. The bridge is basically a simple truss. It has vertical supports and it has diagonal supports in each bay of this structural element. Down below in the diagram here, you see several details. The first one on the left is the bridge floor detail. We were asked, how is this deck built? This deck is Ipe, which is a very dense wood, and the planking is also has non-slip bars or non-slip material placed between every other plank. And that allows us to build a bridge that's compatible with the decking that we're proposing for the porch. So that's a cross section through the decking. And then if you look at the diagram on the extreme right, you see a cross section through the bridge. You see the decking here, it's shaded right there. And then we have supports on each side, vertical supports on each side, and then cross bracing underneath. This is a steel bridge. It has, if you look where the enlarged diagram is in the middle, the upper chord of the truss is tubes, similar to the lower chord of the truss. And at the very bottom of that cord, that tube, will be electrical light fixture, an LED light fixture, which is a very efficient light, continuous light strip that will provide illumination on the decking of the bridge. So there's no posts, no structures that are high. This is a very discreet way to illuminate the decking of the bridge. If you look at that diagram in the middle, in the lower part, you'll see that we have a balustrade, which will be built out of vertical bars. These bars are placed every 4 inches on center so that no one can fall through the diagonal components of the truss. So if you look at the bridge elevation at the top, you'll see there are these horizontal lines that travel left and right, and that's where the bars are to create a balustrade to prevent people from falling through. Next slide. I was asked at the last board meeting about photovoltaics. Will there be photovoltaics on this project? And the answer is yes. The plan is to have a power purchase agreement in place, which is a mechanism for getting photovoltaics built on the roof of the building, the new building, and then share in the savings that cost of electricity that will be shared between the PPA provider and the town. So this diagram illustrates a layout of photovoltaic panels on the roof. These would be low slope photovoltaic panels on a structure that holds them in place. That structure will be ballasted to make sure that there's no movement of these photovoltaics. But I should tell you that this layout is a preliminary layout. The final layout will be provided by the power purchase agreement vendor. Every vendor has his own preferred photovoltaic system. And so when we get that vendor in place, we'll be able to
Sorry.
give you an exact layout based upon that vendor's photovoltaic system. But the principle will be the same. These are low slope panels. We don't expect they'll be seen at all. And it's a technique we've used in many other projects. Next. Oh, before you move on, I think I pointed this out at our last board meeting, but I want to remind the board that we have mechanical equipment on the roof, but that mechanical equipment is located in this sunken area of the roof. It's enclosed with walls, so you can't see the mechanical equipment at all. We're not placing mechanical equipment on the ground. Next. This is what Mike talked about, the entry plaza. If you could point to the doors, the entry area to the library, which is right there. We have the top of the steps that lead to it from the plaza. And to the, if you approach the building and you look to the right, you'll see a ramp that takes you from sidewalk level along Tungus Avenue all the way up. That's an accessible, that is an accessible path for people who need that. And there's a section and an elevation shown at the top of that sheet right there, shows you the slope. Now, what we did is added plantings along the edge of that ramp just to soften the plaza. You'll see there are benches along the northern part of the plaza right there, and then additional benches on the southern side of the plaza. And then we also have plantings at the southern end of this plaza. This is something that Mike talked about a minute ago. The brick, we're proposing a combination of concrete and brick pavers to create this pattern in the plaza. It would add more interest to this landscape, as you can see in this diagram. At the bottom of this plaza, at the southern end of the plaza, is a retaining wall. Deanna, if you could point out, it's an L-shaped retaining wall because there's a grade drop just to the left of this area. And Mike talked about the garden in that area. I think you called it Stewardia. I'm not a landscape expert, but I think that's what he said about the trees that would be placed in that area on the downslope just past that retaining wall. Now, if you trace that retaining wall again, you'll come to the right side of the retaining wall. There's a vertical element right there that you see. We're proposing to place a sign that designates this building as Prosser Library. There are some details that you can see that Deanna is pointing to. That's also a stone structure. And above that, you can see where it says Prosser Library. That's that we're proposing to be an illuminated sign. Next. The last slide I want to share with you is the proposed light fixtures. I think at the last board meeting, we heard the question, well, what are the light fixtures? And we thought we'd show them to you here in this diagram. The red dots that you see on the site plan indicate where these light fixtures would be located. So again, focusing on the plaza area, you'll see that there will be some light poles placed there in that planted area. The plaza light fixture, that picture illustrates the head of the light pole. It would be a vertical pole that would be planted in that planted area. And that would be the head of the fixture that provides good illumination of the plaza. And it has zero cutoff. So we're not going beyond the property line, which is one of the requirements for planning and zoning. Just to the left of the plaza, there's a sidewalk, a walkway that leads to the lower level entrance of the library. There is a parking area under the building, as you can see, under the main level. And then we have an entry vestibule that leads to a set of steps or stairs, as well as an elevator that takes you up to the main level, one floor up above. But that walkway will have illumination. And what we're proposing to do is have bollard light fixtures, as you can see in that picture there. These are roughly 3 feet high, and that will illuminate that walkway. On the parking lot side, we will have parking lot light fixtures. These are taller poles, again, with a very efficient lighting design, as you can see right there on the lower left. And that will provide illumination of the parking lot so that it's safe. And again, complying with planning and zoning requirements, the light will not spill out onto the neighboring parcels. All of these fixtures also do not throw light upwards because one of the requirements is not to do that. Dark skies initiative is what we need to respond to. The picture of the light pole, the street light fixture right there. So Jonathan Tesey, the town engineer, brought this up in our meeting with him. He said that there's a existing light pole that needs to be replaced along the street. It's again near the northeast corner of the parcel of the Prosser site. Deanna, if you could point that out, right along the street there, somewhere along the street there. Jonathan would talk to us about having a light pole replaced in that location. These light poles are provided by Eversource. So they supply them and then they maintain them in the future. So Jonathan would like that to happen here as well. These are, I believe, the same light fixtures that are used on the town green across the street. This is the last slide that we have in our update for this board. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I'm sure that Mike is available for this as well.
Okay, maybe we can go back to the original screen so you can see who's got their hands up. Is that possible, or can we?
You can stop sharing, Deanna.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the presentation. I hope you all had a chance to look at it as well as study the piece that Justin had sent out for us. So are there any, I'll let you all lead off with questions. I have a bunch of my own, but I figure let me give everybody else a chance first. Anybody want to go first? Neil Clark. Go ahead, Neil.
Okay. I saw, I see what you're doing with the lighting, Richard, and just wondering if that's enough. I was looking at the, sort of safety issues on the handicap ramp in the front of the building on the plaza, and wondering how that will be lit, wondering if there's enough. I'm sure there's spillover light from the building, but you've got steps and that ramp and some other public space there along the south side of the building that, I see you nodding your head, so I'll let you answer that question. You're probably well ahead of me. But let me stay with the plaza a little bit. My issue with that plaza all along has been, let's make an effort somehow to turn it into a fun public space, maybe with some artwork, maybe with some, flexibility in terms of use, not just a cold space. You've done some good things with it, I think, with the planters and the paving pattern and so forth, but I'm a little reluctant. I don't know. The benches are nice, but I'd like to come up with some way that those benches can be moved around or something can be done if there's possibly a group of people that are going to sit out there, sit around a table, have lunch, that sort of thing. Right now, it's just sort of a cold, benches on a flat plane kind of a deal. I don't know what the answer is, but I'm going to keep banging away at this issue until I see something that, kind of tickles my fancy. The I'm very happy to see that that drive, that access drive to the dumpster gone, but it raises the issue of clearance for any kind of headroom clearance for any kind of vehicle, larger vehicle that has to service that site. You're really and I don't remember what the ceiling height is of the lower level parking area, but you kind of it's a double-edged sword, because if you make that taller, then you increase the elevation of the finished floor from the plaza level, from all these other elevations that you've got to get to. So I know that's a tough one, but I'm hoping there's not a restriction there that disallows some functionality of the lower level or of the building itself. I think I like what you're doing with the change of elevation of the Riley property. That's a great idea. I'm not real pleased with seeing a switchback handicap ramp. That's the only way to get onto that bridge that now, I mean, if I'm somebody that's handicapped, I'm going to be, very upset at this point, because I can only get into the building really from the lower level. When I go in the lower level, I still have to go up a ramp or down a ramp or whatever that configuration is in the lower lobby, and take an elevator to get up, into the building. There's no real easy flowing access. Again, I see the issues, and I don't have an answer, but it's not a very friendly building for somebody in a wheelchair, even somebody walking with a cane or a walker or something like that. And the other question I had is, and I didn't see it in this, the last time we were together, Kevin Hussein brought up a point about another exit within the building that was purely, I think, in his mind, a relief valve, a way to escape the building in case of some of these crazy, threats that we have these days to the public. I don't know if you guys were able to accommodate that or not. I'll throw that out there, but those are the things that came to mind right away. So thanks. I'll let you answer.
Okay, I was keeping notes as you were
Want
posing
to answer them
questions.
separately, or you want to hear everybody's questions? Which would you think would be more effective? We can.
Well, I think if I immediately respond, then I can associate the responses to the
Okay.
speaker, and people can understand what I'm responding to, I think. So my preference is to answer after each board member. So is there enough light? Yes, there will be enough light. I neglected to mention that there will be under railing lighting at the ramp adjacent to the plaza as well. So that walkway will be illuminated. One of the requirements that we need to do is do a photometric analysis, which we have started to do, and we will present to the Planning and Zoning Commission to get the minimum number of foot candles in the parking lot and at the entry points to make them safe and to make them pleasant. We don't want to overlight them, but we do want to provide the foot candles that are required to satisfy the fire marshal as well as safety. We've done this many times. We are familiar with what kinds of light levels we need to provide. So I assure you, there will be enough light. As to the fit out, if you will, of the plaza, benches, plantings, I can understand what you're saying. It could be a more active, more fun kind of place if it had sculptures, but it's also, I think, a blank slate where that can be developed. Maybe we need to provide power out in that plaza, maybe along the edge of the walkway or along the ramp, maybe with some planted areas, so that there could be an event that may require some power, maybe some illumination during certain times of the year, where maybe you could have tables set up I agree, but in our view, it's a flexible space that could accommodate a variety of activities. As far as art is concerned, there is no requirement for some, like in some projects, if you're doing public work projects, the 1% for art. That is certainly something the library board could do. I will leave that up to the library board to determine what piece or what kind of art could be placed on the plaza. I agree that it's great that the access drive is gone. As far as maintenance of the site is concerned, the bridge is located in such a situation and the topography under the bridge where that bridge crosses that previous access drive has sufficient height for maintenance vehicles to get through. You can't get maintenance trucks through the garage. So we were very, very careful to make sure that, maybe Mike can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have a 12-foot clearance underneath the bridge. The parking garage, I see Jeff nodding his head. So a commercial vehicle can get through that quite easily.
Yes, Richard, just to reinforce that, MDC is requiring 12-foot clearance under the bridge.
Okay, great. And you're right, we can't get anything through the parking garage. We have a balancing act between the elevation of the building, creating a appropriate entrance at the Tungus Avenue side and not making that parking area too high. It is high enough for vehicles, cars, and vans, but not for commercial trucks. The switchback at the bottom of the pedestrian bridge is a requirement, given that we've dropped that grade down quite significantly. And I'm guessing here, Mike, is it about 5 feet or 3 feet? I can't remember exactly.
It's been a total of 6 feet from the very first scheme. This recent change drops it another 2.5 feet plus.
Okay.
Which we have to add the ramp. Unfortunately, that's what was keeping the parking lot grading up. So we didn't have to have those ramps, but there's no way around that, unfortunately.
Right. As far as handicap friendliness is concerned, the best place to put handicap parking spaces is as close to the building as possible, and with an accessible entrance. And we have accommodated that. We have provided that. I know that right now the library has 2 designated handicap spaces on Tungus Avenue. There's that pull-off that right along the street, but those are not proper handicap spaces, quite frankly. The driver exits into the traffic if you are parking in those spaces. In our mind, those pull-offs should be more of a temporary parking, commercial delivery, 15-minute stop, something like that. But I think the lowest level where we have parking spaces there to accommodate people who are disabled is the best location. And as far as an emergency exit, in case there's a terrorist event in the building in the northeast corner, which Kevin Hussein, I think it was Kevin Hussein who brought it up. We have looked at that. It's not required for egress. And it's one of those questions, well, we could put an exit here. There are sufficient exits to exit the building from a fire code and building code standpoint. So I think we've done the appropriate exiting requirements. There's emergency exits above and beyond what the fire code and building code requires is really not something that I would encourage you to do, because if there's a terrorist event, you could probably notify emergency personnel and create a lockdown situation. That's a difficult thing to answer.
Okay. Michelle, you want to go next, or you want me to go next?
Sure.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone.
Nice.
Just right off the top, I would like to make a comment about the statement that was just made, or the phrase, I guess, would be more accurate, about what's required versus what is not required. I think that the board is very well aware of what is required and not required from the standpoint of our experience in dealing with the building regulations and our public officials. However, what is required and what is not required from the standpoint of a newly designed project is up to the applicant. And that's the town of Bloomfield. I think that sometimes we have to think about that. This project should reflect what the town of Bloomfield expects, and all of the entities that are contributing their comments toward this project should be heard. So I wouldn't immediately disregard anything that is not required. Lots of stuff isn't required from the standpoint of the building code, but that doesn't mean that we don't want to build things that we find to be necessary into this project and keep an open mind about that. The first comment that I have with regard to, and I tried to address these as the items were brought forward in tonight's representation. I would prefer that native Connecticut landscaping rather than exotic specimens be used as plantings whenever possible, and particularly with regard to the Stuarty Grove. There are all kinds of native landscaping that could be used to fit the spec that's being addressed here, and I would suggest that we look at that. Now that we're lucky enough to have a registered landscaping architect among us, I'm sure he has all kinds of ideas. The second question that I have is whether or not any stream bank restoration plantings are intended at Washbrook. And I don't know, with the limit of the construction zone of what's going on there, it's not the greatest width in the world from the standpoint of what I can see. But are we looking at any cleanup, restoration, replanting, stabilization, any of that kind of good stuff? And if we are, is it included in a wetland application? I honestly don't know the answer to that. But now would be the opportunity to look at it from the standpoint of what might be needed to stabilize, at least, if not radically improve the area. I always thought that was a resource that's absolutely underutilized, Washbrook. A comment was also made that the two sites, the library proper and the Riley Lumber Company site, are going to be combined. And I thought about that. I think that they certainly can be if, legally the town sees that they want to do that, but they need not be, I don't think either, because the town already has in our parking ordinance an alternate parking vehicle that encourages not only landowners and users and occupants in Bloomfield, especially the town center, to encourage parking sharing. But the town has an opportunity to do that as well, because I think that we know that most municipalities over-specify the number of parking spaces on an ordinary basis. So I think that would be maybe something we want to look at. The bottom line on this, I think shared parking could be accomplished whether we legally consolidate the land or not. So that would be a happy outcome. My fourth comment is about the bridge. I would like to know what this bridge is going to look like from the street elevation. When you consider the elevation, spot elevations that are given on the revisions for tonight's plan, I didn't go back to look at the original plan set to see if that information was also given. I'd like to know what that's going to look like to the person on the street. We're looking at the bottom of it. We're looking at the top of it in some areas, especially over the brook, where it's the largest elevation, as I understand it, in feet. What's that going to look like? But secondly, my most important reservation about the bridge is how and what does this design reflect relative to the proposed building? I don't really see it reflecting, as far as the materials are concerned, much of anything in that regard, and that gives me serious concern. There's so many other materials that could be used. Let's span the gap between point A and point B on a straight angle, not aligned, by the way, which causes the eye to try to make it be aligned. There are all kinds of different alternatives there, and I'm wondering why none of those were pursued. We have the opportunity to do this once and do it right. And I don't think this is going to look anything like I in particular would think would be a good opportunity. You know, there are such things as radiuses. I mean, I even worked one into my deck and my back porch. So, you know, it's possible to do different things here and use different materials. And the fact that these all metal materials are not really even defined from the standpoint of how they are to be painted or left in their actual state, because paint is referred to, I think, in 2 instances. Another question on the bridge. How do pedestrians negotiate this when it's ice covered? When we have one of our famous Connecticut ice storms and have 1.5 inches or 1 inch of ice, I realize that de-icers are easy to use, but that's quite a steep slope. I would be very concerned about how people would negotiate that. Somebody in a wheelchair, as Neil brought up, that would be a whole other concern. I'd be very concerned about that. The other thing that I would like to know is, what is the height of the opening from the last rung of the balustrade to the decking surface? Could a small child slide through there? I don't know. What's the height of it? I'd really want to know that. I would also like to have as I said before, any colors that are intended to be included in that bridge to be stated what they are. Let me see. With regard to the lighting, and I think I understand the kind of lighting you're going to be using there. And I understand that it's going to be night sky sensitive and won't glow upward, and that's a good thing. But in a practical way, if I'm on that bridge, will I be able to see who is before me and behind me, as in identifying them, or is mainly the walkway and feet going to be something that I'm going to see? I'd like to know what the field of vision is going to be with regard to how that lighting projects. And I understand, Ricard, to say that you're going to be giving more information on the lighting, so I'd be interested in seeing that. Just overall, the bridge design and the material are not acceptable to me. I don't understand how they relate to the building, how any kind of reflection between the design and especially the materials used do much of anything, if anything at all, to reflect harmony with the building and the built surroundings. My next comment are about the plaza lighting that's proposed. I don't think that the lighting sample that is shown is a Bloomfield fixture. Doesn't coordinate even vaguely with anything that I see around Bloomfield. Not to say that our multi-fixture history is anything to be proud of, but from the standpoint of how minimalist this design is, I don't think that it fits in with much of anything. In particular, the parking lot fixture, it has an institutional look that I think is not appropriate. With regard to how we are looking at this project overall, and I've made my comments with regard to the design of the building very clear, so I won't reiterate any of those things. But this project is continuing the minimalist contemporary look that doesn't relate to its surroundings. I'm very concerned that even such things as the lighting can't be softened, that the bridge serving the building can't be imaginative rather than the pedestrian, as far as I'm concerned, concept that we are looking at. There are quite a few things that I think could go a very long way toward giving the building a more graceful, integrated look. Those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Michelle,
Yeah.
Richard, do you want to answer that now?
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to make some comments or responses to the questions and comments that were raised. One of the comments had to do with native plantings, and whether or not there'll be a cleanup or restoration of Washbrook or some other treatment along Washbrook. I will leave that to Mike Segan to respond, if I may. And I'll just touch upon some of the other things and then come back to Mike.
Sure.
Regarding the combining the lots, this was
Gotcha.
something that was requested by the town engineer as part of an effort to make sure that we're complying with zoning regulations. And so you're absolutely right. There's a provision in the regulations that allows shared parking, remote parking, but this was his recommendation. As far as the bridge is concerned, this is a steel bridge and it's painted or coated. And in our view, it should be painted white. This is the way we had constructed the model. You may remember the photographs of the model that we showed last time. In those photographs, we represented the bridge as being white.
Richard, could you hold for a second? The town planner has a question, maybe it's related to the previous issue about the lot. Dennis?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say that a lot of the questions that are being raised will be addressed during planning and zoning if they haven't been already. There are either regulations in the zoning regulations or will come up under the, overall public hearing. And as far as some of the plantings go, like specifically Stewardia and me being a landscape architect, that is a plant that has been, it's not an invasive plant that I'm aware of, and it's been around and has been used for 100+ years, in our landscape. So, but I do have questions regarding, and I'll address this during the planning and zoning portion at some point, but what the bridge looks like, a little bit more on the materials. I know, talked to EPA, but the materials for the railings, and then, they have to meet building code. They have to meet building code. It goes to the state building official as well. So I'll just, that was just a couple of comments I wanted to raise, and I'm sorry to jump in there.
No, I welcome your comments. Thank you. So continuing with the bridge, in response to the question about the railing height, it's 44 inches. And it's not possible for a child to slip through. We have horizontal bars that are 4 inches apart. It's not possible to insert a large object through that.
I was only referring, Rickard, to the bottom allowance between the surface of the deck and the first rung. What is that dimension?
Oh, that's also 4 inches.
Oh, okay, fine. Then I have no concern.
Thank you.
Mhm.
As far as snow and ice, navigating along the bridge for snow and ice, one of the items that we've been talking to the building committee about, in fact, we had a meeting last night, is having as part of the bid an add alternate to provide heating of the decking to allow for snow and ice to melt. You have to turn on those elements when snow is forecast. You can't do it after a big snowfall. But before snow starts arriving, if you turn the heating elements on, it will take care of any snow and ice buildup.
Okay.
As far as lighting in the bridge, and is it going to be bright enough to be able to see other people on the bridge? I'm not so sure. It's designed primarily to illuminate the decking, the footpath itself. The only way to achieve what you're concerned about is to create light fixtures that are higher. And that's not part of the design at the moment.
My concern about that is security, as you might guess.
Yes, yes. And as far as the plaza lighting not being a Bloomfield type fixture, I mean, the fixtures can be changed. And that's something that we can continue to discuss, and I'm sure it will be brought up at planning and zoning meetings as well.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess that leaves me, since Mark, we're holding him aside because he's on the building committee, and I do have a few questions too. First of all, I'm pleased that you accepted a number of our previous suggestions, particularly with the service drive. I didn't quite understand why I needed all that additional expense and taking away from the site. But also, you've also eliminated the big dumpster on Tungus Avenue, which would have been a terrible thing to stick in front of your new building. So I think that all works out very well. I'm happy to see the additional pavers added to the plaza. Personally, I would like to see more of them rather than fewer of them, but I'm more concerned about the contrasting nature of the concrete versus the pavers. Hopefully the concrete can be tinted in such a way, or at least take the terrible glare that comes on white concrete against whatever color paver you're going to use, which I assume might be something similar to what has been installed at the town hall. So it's basically like a Boston, one of those Boston pavers, rich brown and with reds in it. The addition of benches on the plaza, I'm thankful for that. I don't know what kind of benches they are. I hope they're not concrete. I hope they're not even marble. I think something, a traditional bench that you can be comfortable in and relax is what we're looking for. And I sort of like the idea that Neil brought up about some of them being movable. I was most impressed the time I visited Paris, and saw in their parks chairs that weren't bolted to the ground.
That's right.
You know, it says something, it says a lot. Hold on. But I'm not sure that that's something that this country is still yet ready to adapt, but I think it would be far better to have at least benches that create an arrangement suitable for conversation rather than hugging the wall and being, thrown aside just as another situation. So I think there's more work there, but again, I would like the benches that were put in the town green are a good example of something that might be accommodating. The planter beds below the ramp and on the south side as well. I don't know what plants you're thinking of putting in there. Obviously something that, to get tall, but maybe something that flows over the wall, or I don't know what you're considering. There's no indication, but I do hope that there's irrigation in there, because otherwise there's no way to maintain that. And I think you had that discussion previously about irrigation. And one thing is, we don't want another embarrassment like we had at 330 Park, where a $250,000 landscape was left to rot, and hard-earned tax money was lost. So we have to, if we're going to put it in, we have to maintain it. I also support Neil's comments too about the size of the space. It just seems very large without a program, without a purpose, and that makes it difficult. Whether or not it can adopt a personality, whether or not an afterthought of a work of art would be established. I think all these things might be offered up, even if in sketch form early at this point, to give people a sense of what could be done in that space. What will be done most likely will be whatever's installed. And to think beyond that at this point it may be wishful thinking. But I think the scale of it is very large for its function, and it needs to have some purpose defined, and that whether it's a seating situation, maybe there's a cutout for planting in the center of it, maybe there's the artwork, whatever it is. It just seems it's the largest plaza in town. We don't want that to be a negative thing. So I'll just throw that out there. The facing stone on the concrete, I assume that's facing, you're not really using real boulders to build that wall. I don't know where you got that context from, using a stone facing. It's not in the district, in the area. And I think, you might be more welcome to see either a brick or a brownstone facing. I understand probably the need to change materials, but to change materials is something that has no context, is anybody's guess as to why that was done. Let's see. As to the lighting, yeah, we have a problem in this town of coming to grips with a design for public lighting. Comprehensive plan made some suggestions, but no one was ever tasked to come up with something so that there was some consistency. In fact, there was the desire to have more attention paid to pedestrian activity and streetscape improvements has never really been fleshed out in that detail. As you see, you have, I think, different lighting fixtures, street lighting fixtures at Philly Pond as at the Town Green, as at Heirloom Flats. Well, Heirloom Flats is its own thing, but the town center closer in maybe should have a consistent appearance. The old fixtures represent an idea, but they do spill a lot of light. There's no question about that. If we're going to do a cutoff, then we're going to change all the lighting to a more of a modern fixture with a modern luminaire. But at least at this point, either we're sort of we've sort of paid into the process, and the poles are appropriate. The poles, those older poles, I think are consistent. The same poles appear at both of the installations. The fixtures are somewhat different, and maybe we should be looking at least to be consistent with one of them. Maybe whatever choice. I think I can't remember which has the biggest spill or the brightest effect, whether it's Philly Pond or the Town Green, but maybe there has to be some research done on that. We should have done that before we got involved in any of these projects, for sure. But we didn't. So we're here now, and we have to make the best of that. Question, there's been no indication, but is there any intent to replace any or all of the sidewalks as part of this project because of construction or not because of construction? Is that part of the improvement process? Well, all right. I'm going to answer the questions later. I just was wondering that because the consistency of materials there would have to be, or should be considered. Dennis, you had a question or a comment at this point?
Yeah, I think there's a number of items that are coming up that would be great to put into a letter of a recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission under their auspices, and see where that goes. And there's also aspects related to the town itself as the applicant, or the library as the applicant. Public art. I think the corner is very important, and I think a number of the discussion points are very important from the lighting standpoint, and we're going through the POCD update. And between Justin and I, we can put together some recommendations as we go through the application process with the Planning and Zoning Commission for their consideration as well, and how some of this fits in with the town and the library as well. So I just wanted to share that.
Well, thank you for that. I had one more lighting question. The north side drive exiting the parking lot underneath the building has no lighting whatsoever. We don't know whether it's necessary. There will be some spillover from the parking lot to the north. I just wondered if there was some, you're coming out into a dark place. These are handicapped people. Is it going to be bright enough? That's my question. Parking lot. We talked about, it abuts a wetland and a water course, and is an integral part of this Leeds building. And I feel it may be time that we experiment with some more permeable pavements for something like this. Reducing your sheet flow into the brook or into the retention areas. If we don't do it in our Leeds building, we won't do it. I know there's some lack of receptivity by most public works directors because they never saw the material. I've seen some installations that have been there a while, and I don't understand why we're not using more of it, but I put it out there for consideration. With regard to the Wash Brook Trail, I think that's a concept that has, again, needs to be further developed from point A to point B, point A being the Philly Pond, point B being Gillette Ridge. It goes all the way down there. But for this area particularly, to choose the east side of the brook seems to be maybe a mistake because it's narrower. You have to go behind the newly reconstructed hardware store. Not a very attractive walkaway past the parking lot when you have all that room on the other side.
Mhm.
That is much softer. You have much more opportunity to work with it. And so I would question why it's on the east side, but going forward, you can take that up. Signage. I heard for the first time tonight, I think Richard mentioned that the sign Prosser Library is a lighted sign. I thought it was etched into the concrete. So my question was, would it be lit from the bottom up or top down so you could see that? But it's backlit, is that correct, Richard? Yes, okay, so it's gonna be backlit. And there's been some discussion as to what the name of the library is. To us, it's old timers, it's always been the Prosser Library, but the new administration has frequently used the Bloomfield Public Library. And I think this is the opportunity to seal that issue. So whatever name you come up with, it will go on that sign. Let's see. I think there's a couple more questions. Oh, the solar panels on the roof. I wasn't able to count them, but there seemed like an extreme number of panels that might have more residual for perhaps sharing the cost savings with other town facilities. Like, for example, we have a solar field up behind the Board of Education that helps underwrite the cost of public buildings and some other private neighbors in the area. The amount of panels on this roof suggests there might be more than are necessary just to operate this facility. And I just was wondering if there was any additional, benefit to putting that many units up on the roof. And let's see. I heard on your meeting, there were some questions about the exiting from the garage onto Tunxus. I think that's worked out properly. You only turn right, getting out of there, and only come in from the north with a right turn. I think that made a lot of sense. That was another question that came up. The lights on the bridge. I don't know if that's a unique replacement part. If the Public Works had to replace it after 6 years or 5 years, would they find it? Was there going to be a substitute? It's not my issue necessarily, but what I'm concerned, one issue I'm concerned about is the cutoff from those lights. Are they shielded from, say, Mountain Avenue? They put all the light on the floor, or is it still north and south? That would be could be a cause of concern, although it could be maybe not. It could be attractive lighting, and you have an arc of light going across the bridge and so forth. But I don't know what's to be expected, what the goal of that is. And I did hear one signage question come out of the building committee. One of the members asked whether or not you're going to have a rooftop sign. I certainly hope there's no rooftop sign that can be seen on the highway. So those are my comments and questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. I skipped over one of Board Member Michelle Bononi's questions, and that had to do with the restoration or plantings along Washbrook. And I said I would ask Mike Segan to comment on that. So with your permission, I'd like to go back to that question and ask Mike to
Sure.
comment on that.
Go
Mike?
ahead.
Yeah, I would, I'll respond to that, and then maybe, if you don't mind, Richard, just hit on a couple of the site questions that David had as well. Um, good question, Michelle, on the stream side of brook plantings. We're working with Peter Castaldi and our wetland scientist to add some supplemental plantings along the brook. So it was good comment. We're looking at that now and developing those plans. Relative to your question about native, I've been doing this a long time, and I always select the best plant. Many cases, for a situation, many cases it is native. Some cases it isn't. And I think Dennis made a good comment about the Stewardia being what we feel, given the situation and what we're looking for there, is probably the best plant at this point. But always, I find that in selecting the best plant, many times it is a native. And you'll note the plant list has over 50% of the plants are native on the plant list. The rest are adaptable and very hardy, introduced material, not non-native, non-invasive plant material. The question on the parking lot permeable pavers, we've had a lot of experience with that. We did the acres at West Farms Mall way back when. It was kind of a novel thing to do. The grass pavers and anything related to that where you want to try to get some green in are extremely high maintenance and can be of an issue. We just recently did it, the Whole Foods in Avon Village Center here.
Mhm.
The bituminous pavement that is permeable. So that was worked into most of the parking lot. You can't do it in the aisles. The state of the art, unfortunately, is not where we'd like it to be. It does not hold up as long as normal bituminous pavement. It tends to break down a little quicker, but that might be a more reasonable alternative versus the grass pavers, which are extremely high maintenance and most susceptible to be damaged at the time of year you want them to be working. And West Farms during the holiday season, it's often muddy out there, and the place just gets torn up by cars. So we certainly can look into that if the committee in town wants us to do that. The location of the trail along Washbrook, I actually, David asked the same question to a team member that has been involved, I think, in some understanding of the potential future trail connections, whether it should be on the east and west side. My inclination was to do it on the west side. It's more natural there. But his comment was, I think the selected route is along the east side because there are potential connections there. And there is a property between Philly Park and the Riley Lumber parcel, the former Riley Lumber parcel, that would be problematic for the trail connection. And so that's why we located it on the east side of the brook. Apparently that is where the anticipated connection is being made. I think those are the site questions.
Michael, if I can add to that, the question on the west side, just north of the parking area, I think there is an interceding parcel that is part of the shopping center. And I do believe when that shopping center was approved, there was some discussion about access to the park. So, it just because it's there doesn't mean it's not crossable. So I think we need, you really need to go and look at that. And I do like your comment about the permeable paver. I wasn't thinking about grass, certainly, but the permeable asphalt, even as you suggest, would be a step forward, I think, for us to try and deal with the issues of runoff and holding the water if we can. So if that's something the building committee wants to take up, we would certainly, I would hope that we would I can speak for myself. I would support something like that. So I think there's opportunity, and we've
Mhm.
refrained from that opportunity because everybody throws their hands up, and now we got to step forward. It's our project. I think we can take a shot at it. Okay, that's mine. So,
If I could just respond to a few more comments
yes, thank you.
that you brought up, Mr. Chairman. The plaza pavers, we'd certainly be open to a suggestion to increase the number of pavers. And we intend to actually have a mock-up built to allow the building committee to see the actual brick that we're proposing. For example, we could certainly work it into a sample concrete as well. Your idea about a tinted concrete is a good one. Whether or not the building committee wants to go for that, that remains to be seen. But I think the best way to get to a conclusion is to actually look at real samples.
Richard, I think we were even considering an add alternate. We reduced, we originally were going to do all pavers in that plaza, and for budget reasons, we had to look at an alternative like that as an add alternate. So I believe that is still being considered as an add alternate to go with all pavers at the entry plaza.
That would be elegant.
So regarding the movable benches and maybe even tables, I find that an intriguing idea. Maybe some tables with Cinzano umbrellas over them would be spectacular. Maybe even illuminated if we can get power to them. But so we're in the building design phase right now. I will tell you that the project has a furniture and equipment budget as well. Maybe this should be a suggestion brought back to the library committee about allocating some of the furniture money to outdoor furniture. I think that would be a good strategy.
That would fulfill the library director's desire to have more space outside for people to sit around. So thank you.
Books and burgers. I like that idea.
Okay.
As far as the stone veneer, I think your suggestion is a good one. We should look at other stone. It doesn't have to be river stone, for example. A stone veneer of some sort. It could be brownstone, which would be, I think, very much in keeping. And it also could be brick. So we will look at some alternatives. Lighting is an issue. You're absolutely right. It's a bit of a quandary. What we did is chose fixtures that will achieve the dark sky zero cutoff. If there are others that we can find, then we can certainly look at that. Is the intent to replace the sidewalk? I think I'm going to ask Mike to comment on that. I think we are replacing some sidewalk, especially on the front of Prosser. But Mike, if you could maybe illuminate a little bit more about.
Yeah, we are replacing the sidewalk. Presently mostly concrete along Tungus Avenue, so that will be upgraded, new curbing put in, and the walk pulled a little bit away from that historic oak that we're going to preserve and save in front of the library.
Mm-hmm. The purpose of the question was if they're going to replace significant amounts of the sidewalk, maybe the design could reflect what you're doing on the plaza. If you're going to have, the brick lines through it, you could put them in the sidewalk. You probably still do that. You can cut them into the sidewalk anyway, if that's what you wanted to do. But I just didn't know how much, if any, was going to be replaced. And by the way, I didn't notice any street light poles on the street. Go with the existing poles. Is that what we're using?
I believe so. I mean, that's a good question. We'll go back and look at the lighting plan a little bit more carefully.
Okay.
Just a couple of more things. The idea of the name, the library name, in all my meetings with the building committee, I haven't heard anything. Of course, could have had a meeting without me in which the conversation came up about the name of the library, but every project we do, sometimes we get to a certain point in the project when committee members say, is it time to honor someone in the community by naming the library after them, or the school, or whatever building is involved, but we should bring that question back to the library committee. And as far as the number of solar panels being excessive, I'm not sure they are excessive. When we were initially studying the solar potential, we had an analysis done by a solar panel company, and he predicted that we'd be able to power the needs of the library. I think that in a PPA agreement, I think probably the PPA vendor will want to maximize the number of panels on the roof because he shares in the benefits of that. And then could you provide power to other town buildings or neighbors? Possibly. I mean, that's something that a PPA vendor, I think, would be very much interested in striking deals with other neighbors as well. That's still to be determined.
Yeah, it might be in the town's best interest to do that too.
Correct. But I appreciate all of your comments. Hopefully we answered most of them.
Most of them. Okay, Dennis? Comment?
And Mr. Chairman, I would just like to say that I think between Justin and I, we have enough notes here that we can bring back recommendations to the Planning and Zoning Commission as they continue to evaluate. There's been a lot of detailed discussions here and some that are very specific to what lies under the auspices of the planning and zoning regulations. So we will need to evaluate them as it relates to what the code allows to as well. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Mark, before I call on you, I want to ask the other members if they have any follow-up questions or before we go move on. Michelle or Neil?
Just so that we are improving our communications, which we have long sought to do. We would hope that the members of the Design Review Board would receive a copy of town planners' comments that go to the TPZ. That would be helpful to us.
We will provide that.
Thank you.
Neil?
No other comments. I had a couple of questions, but you raised the questions to Richard, so, and they've been answered. So thank you.
Good. Well, let's go to Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, everybody, for your comments. I just want to simply let everybody know how cooperative and helpful the town engineer and the Department of Public Works has been in this design process. You know, those significant changes in elevations and drainage, getting rid of that service drive, moving the dumpster is all because of their cooperation. And, you know, that's how it's supposed to be. So I wanted to, you know, publicly thank them as I did at our building committee last night and let everybody know that, you know, that process has been pleasant and effective. So thanks to them.
Thank you, Mark. And I guess that pretty much wraps up this this item for us tonight. Thank you all for coming and for giving us a chance to comment and then responding back to those comments. Very much appreciated. And I think it sort of restores our faith in the process that was sort of lost back in January when we had our first meeting and didn't hear from you for a long time. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Good luck and
I agree.
continuing to get to our goal.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, design team.
Yeah, very much. Well, you're welcome to stay, but if you, I'm sure you may have other things to do, but we have some other business to attend to. Justin, I understand that Mr. Butler had wanted us to take a look at his sign again. Is there a change in what he originally showed us?
Yeah, so he'd like to come before you tonight to talk about the monument sign at 713 Bloomfield Ave. Technically, because the agenda was posted yesterday, we need a vote to add it to the agenda. I'm not sure if that's something that this group has typically done, but if so, we would just need a motion and a second and then a vote to add it.
I will make the motion, Mr. Chairman, if you should so desire.
So move it. I will
I
accept.
will second it.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
It's unanimous. You have your vote.
Thank you.
So,
Good evening, Paul Butler, representing Telus Green at 713 Bloomfield Avenue. I was receiving information that I was on the agenda, so I'm not sure where the disconnect was, so my apologies for that. I did receive a notification a week ago that I was on the agenda. But besides that, so what we've done is we took some aspects of the recommendations from the last meeting when we presented the sign. The two main changes are we are carving the logo into the sign. They try to do a 3D rendering to show that. The best we could do is show a picture of a previous sign they had done, because no matter what we did, it just wasn't looking correct. So we can hopefully pull that up. I don't know, Justin, if you're the one that doesn't say Telus on it, if you could possibly show that. And then we also removed the website that multiple members, commission members did not like having the website on the sign. So those are the two changes we made. So with that said,
Dennis, do you have that on hand? I can't give us my email.
I think I can. Just give me a moment. I probably
Sure.
can find it in my email.
who said that? Okay.
and publicly, Justin and Dennis, welcome to the town of Bloomfield. Looking forward to working with you.
Thank you. Same here.
I have the email. I just gotta share my screen.
Oh, great. So that is the look and the feel of the carved sign where it says acupuncture of the
Yep.
of what we're going to do on the Telus sign. So if we could, if you feel comfortable looking at that, then we can switch over to the other email, Dennis, that shows just the sign we originally presented. It should only say 713 on it without any website address.
I'm not sure which one that's gonna be.
It was a secondary email, actually. I sent two separate emails.
Yeah,
I believe to both you and
I think it's a
Justin
PDF.
separately. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. So the Telus, the green, the apartments at 713 will be carved into the sign. And we removed the website as requested at the last meeting. And I at that point, I would say just open for questions.
Okay. All right, can we, everybody say, look at this long enough, we can take it down so we can see each other, or,
Okay, I have comment.
go ahead, Michelle.
Paul, any chance that the medallion in the center could be ovoid?
The medallion,
Yep,
I'm sorry, what are you asking for?
change it to an oval.
You mean its relation to the space?
It's a great improvement from what you had before, and thanks so much for the change in the text. Also, I think it's referred that the caps on the posts are painted, they're not copper. Are they painted?
Painted aluminum post, which
No, the caps.
it doesn't say. I would,
They look like they're supposed to be copper, that's why.
yeah,
I asked.
I would write down as my note that they will be copper.
Okay, and then the post next door, I take it is a standard for a lamp?
I missed that. I'm sorry. What's that?
I think that's a side view.
Oh, that's a
Will we-
side view. Okay,
Yeah.
how will this be lit, Paul?
From the ground up.
Oh, okay, so it will be the ground up. I think it's a great improvement. The only thing that I would ask, I think it'd look great if you had the sign itself with the text shaped like an oval, but it's your call.
I'd like to hear everyone else's opinion on that, but I would be fine with that.
Okay. That's the only comments I have. Great improvement.
Thank you.
Mark, any comments?
I'm glad you provided us with the example, because the only comment I had was how much dimension does it have, that it's not simply a painted sign. But I think it's very pleasing the way it is. Scale, is that color, that green color, representative, you think, of how it's going to be?
Yes,
Yeah,
as
I,
best we can do, yes.
yeah, I think it looks great.
Neil?
On my screen, it looks like there's a little yellow mixed in with the, some of the detail on that, but it just might be my computer. Is it just green and white? Or is there any other color involved in that?
Green and white, and as they carve through some of the shades, I think you're seeing a backdrop of a lighter green as they carve it through.
Okay, all right, yeah, yep, I like the carving. I'm okay with the circle. Sorry, Michelle, but my background is rectangles and circles, not ovals.
I was only thinking the fact that it would be a softer residential look. That's my only reasoning.
If I may add to that, I think to the point of the oval is that the posts on both the left and the right side, there seems to be a lot of space between the posts and the sign itself for the scale. So whether it stays a circle or an oval, that might help with the overall scale. That's the thought I had. So I'll just share that.
Well, I think that's a good comment. Obviously, if it's they're looking for something round and this satisfies it, they could perhaps bring the posts in a little closer. There's no reason to have that much space showing necessarily. In fact, I would wonder why it's so tall. Usually,
Yes,
property sign is closer to the ground. There's no reason to be up that high, and they can blow over. At that high, it's like your other sign. But
Yeah, it needs to be visible as well for people that are driving.
But that's not as important as my concern I have as to how it's going to be lit. And you say it's going to be lit from the ground. There are fixtures that can give you a very tight cutoff, and should you use them, because this is a traffic way, and sometimes ground mounted lights not only can glare out into the roadway, but sometimes when they're maintaining the shrubs in the lawn, they get bumped and they go askew. So you have a potential glare out into the traffic way, into oncoming cars, which, as I said at the last meeting, that's why I was asking, well, how long is this light going to be on, all through the night or what? So I think if that can be resolved with proper lighting fixture with a good cutoff. Again, my only two comments is it too tall? And I don't know, that's the rest of it. It's your image. That's your call. You can't comment.
right.
Can't comment on that. Does it meet the zoning requirement for a sign? I don't know that, and that's not our purview either. So the TPZ will have to do those dimensions and raise those questions. That's not our thing. But those are my comments, the lighting and the height.
Just to the
Wait,
point
Joe,
about the lighting.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, we do have a zoning regulation. I'm looking at it. Let's see, direct external lighted sign shall be illuminated only to the degree necessary to ensure that the sign is readable. So P&Z will take a look at that and make sure that's the case.
Okay, so I think we just need to, I actually agree, I agree. I think there's too much arm length on that sign going left and right. So we'll bring that in as best as we can to pull that all together. So instead of being, I think it's at 72 inches and the sign might have been 48. I think we'll bring that in as close as comfortable to make it work. And I'm not sure, I think I appreciate your comments. I'm glad we made the changes. We will make that shorter in dimension. I guess we're looking for a recommendation, I think, unless you have any other questions.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
I just, I like this space between the circle and the posts. I think it makes it lighter, airier. As soon as you bring those posts in close to whatever's in the center, whether it's round or oval or square, whatever, it all becomes one large element. And I think it's just going to make the whole thing look a lot bigger if you compress it. There's always that argument about signage. Is it the lettering itself? Is it the background that's it's on as well? I think it's very light looking right now, and I like that. So put that in the mix.
Yeah,
I have to say, in 2014, I went in front of planning and zoning and said that there's no way everyone's going to agree on the design of this building. So I think we hired the design professionals to design that, I guess, light and airy look. So we did the carving, the lighting, and I guess we'll wait for more comments. So I saw Michelle raising her hand. So
Yes, how about we say design A or B are both acceptable to design review board and move to send a positive recommendation to either one to the TPZ. How's that?
Second that.
yeah.
Okay,
Could you accept a friendly amendment
what is it?
depending upon further information on lighting? I mean, the lighting of it.
Commonwealth gives approval.
Pending the furnishing of the lighting specification.
And the
Okay.
planning and zoning will take care of making sure that it meets the regulations.
Great, you can put that in there anyway.
Okay, that's good. All right, motion made and seconded and amended. All those in favor?
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thanks, Paul.
thank you. Happy holidays, everyone. I might not see you.
You
You
too, Paul.
Thank
Take
you.
care, Paul.
Okay, that brings us up to, I don't know if there are any commissioner updates, but I think the most important thing about this meeting at this point is to give our two new staff members another chance to say something. Anything they'd like to say. They've now observed one of our meetings, and I appreciate the input that they've already provided. But this is a chance where usually the staff report also includes whatever else is on the table that you've got to deal with, and if it affects this board or not, but preferably if it affects something that might be coming up to us in the future. So Dennis or Justin?
Yeah, so I apologize, Mr. Chairman, that we didn't get an opportunity to meet yesterday, and I'm glad you and Justin actually were able to sit down and chat. But and Mark knows me from a while back, and but I'm a licensed landscape architect, hence my Stewardia comment, and I'm also a licensed certified planner and certified urban designer, and I'm certified, I guess, in a lot of different aspects of life, but leave it at that. But no, glad to be here, and Justin will be leading the charge. But I think the most important thing at this point for you to know is that the POCD update is going to be happening. We had our kickoff meeting yesterday, and FHI Studio is the consultant that is on board for that effort. So there's the first phase, it's about a year process. The first phase is the visioning process of, I believe it's 4 months. And then following that 4-month process is the drafting and other outreach aspects associated with it. And there's going to be more to come out with press releases and whatnot. So I think that's probably the most important component. And Justin and I are digging into all of the various aspects of the regulations to come up to speed with the town center, with whatever it is, different corridors, Blue Hills, so we're here at your disposal. I've been in the consulting and public industry, for over 25 years, and I've seen enough, and looking forward to this, and I was excited about the opportunity, and I'll leave it at that. And Justin, if you have anything you want to share.
Sure. So it's nice to meet you all. I'm looking forward to working with all of you. David, it was nice to meet you yesterday and have a chance to talk. My background, I am also a certified planner and a certified zoning enforcement official. I've been in planning for about 10 years now or so. Before this, I was a regional planner with the Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governments. So I kind of have a little bit of a diverse background in planning, but I'm excited to be back in the municipal end of things. So yeah, that's about it. Like Dennis said, POCD is going to be a big thing. You're probably going to start seeing some pop-up events and whatnot starting in January after the holidays, because the holidays are a bad time to schedule any kind of thing like that. Yeah, it's nice to meet you and looking forward to working with you.
Well, thanks for your input. I have one question. In the POCD process, has there been any movement on setting up an advisory committee? Is that already in place?
Not to my knowledge. I don't believe it's in place yet. I think that's going to be something that's very early in the process. But I think, unless I'm wrong, Dennis, I don't know if you've heard anything else.
I haven't. That's a really good question. And Jose is at our disposal to follow up on certain matters, and we can check in with him as well as Stanley, the town manager, and see if something has been set up. But that's a really good question.
No, Justin is correct. That step has not been taken, but it is projected.
Nice to have you with us, Mr. Manager.
Yeah, I've been listening in. Good
Good.
meeting, and you've met the dynamic duo that I called them, and I couldn't be prouder to have them.
Well, it was, our first initial introductions and experiences have been terrific so far. So I look forward to ongoing, I wouldn't say collusion, but working together. Because a lot of gaps that I think with their abilities and specialties, we really can close. So I'm very excited to have them with us.
Yeah, on your question about the advisory committee, I think it also, we're wrapping our arms around schedules of meetings right now. Justin just started on Monday. I started last Monday, which was a half of a week. And, so we're getting to learn everybody and how the town is working. So, and how it works. We'll get that pulled together soon enough.
Terrific. I don't
Yeah.
think there are any public comments, but any of our board members want to say something after hearing anything at all at this point? Or how about an entertaining motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, well, all those in favor? Aye,
Aye.
very much. And
Thank you all.
Neil, have a good vacation. Enjoy your time away. And we'll be back. We'll see you, I guess, at the next opportunity. Thank you very much for participating with us. Have a good evening, everybody.
Good
Happy
night.
holidays.
Thanks, David.
you, everyone.
Happy
you.
holidays.
Holidays.
Bye.